In this lesson, we'll create our first basic form. I have already prepared a simple web module that will be used to test custom form service. All this web module does is adding Open Custom Form button to the Workflows panel. This button calls form method, which will be responsible for creating a custom form. So let's go there to create our first basic form. As you can see, all the imports are already in place. So let's start by obtaining custom form service. Next, I will define our custom form, starting with structure API, which in this case means JavaScript object. Let's add type. Okay, all forms need a list of fields. A field is simply a JavaScript object with properties describing the given field. Every field must have a unique ID, and ID is all it takes to create the simplest field. So let's say we want to create a form to get data about passenger. I will define following fields. First name, last name, and title. All we need to do now is to call service open form method, passing in our form. Let's save. Now, let's go to Sabre Red Web. I have ngv run already running, and web module is loaded via Red App Development panel as indicated by green puzzle icon on the right. To see changes, I will reload using Ctrl-Shift-R. Once reloaded, let's go to Workflows panel and open Custom Form. Now you can see our first basic form. A few elements to note. By default, all fields are text fields and are optional, as indicated by optional suffix in label. This means that filling the field is not mandatory to be able to submit the form. Secondly, labels were generated from the IDs. Each part of the camel case ID is treated as a distinct word in label. Also, default modal title form and default buttons OK and cancel are being used. In the upcoming lessons, we'll learn to customize many elements of the form, but let's start with title and label. I will go back to code. The title of the modal can be defined by adding title next to the field's property. Let's call our modal passenger data. And custom field label can be defined using label property. Let's say we want to have title/prefix as label of the title field. Now let's save, and I will go back to Sabre Red Web. Once reloaded, I will open our form once again. Here you can see custom title, passenger data, and our custom label, title/prefix, next to first name and last name labels generated from IDs. So far, we have been using Structure API. Let's see how such a form can be achieved using Text API. I will start by commenting out our structure, and then I will define form, this time as a string, once again. Here, we need to specify a comma-separated list of field IDs. So, to achieve the same form, I will use first name, last name, and title IDs. At this point, you can see the first difference. It is not possible to define a custom label using Text API. So we cannot change label of the title field to be title/prefix. However, we can still change modal title, passing custom title as a second argument of OpenForm method. I will use passenger data once again. Note that the OpenForm method always takes a form definition as its first argument, either as a string or as a JavaScript object. The second argument, title, is ignored in the case of structure API. So, if you use structure API, then the title must be defined in the structure as we did before. Let's save our changes, and I will go to Sabre Red Web. Let's reload using Ctrl-Shift-R. Once reloaded, I will open our custom form once again. And you can see that we achieved exactly the same form, with the only difference being title as a label of the last field instead of title/prefix. At this point, the question is how to access the data from the form. The OpenForm method returns a promise with a structure containing all the necessary information. There are several ways to work with promises, but we will use async await. Let's mark our form method as async. We can do that safely as this method is being triggered as button on-click action. Now let's define a response. I will add type, which is custom form response, and await to resolve a promise. Next, let's console log response. Just to be able to take a look at its structure. I will save and switch to Sabre Red Web. Now let's reload using Ctrl-Shift-R. Once reloaded, I will open console using Ctrl-Shift-I. Then I will clear console. Next, let's open form and pass in some example data. I will submit form using OK button. And now you can see our response in console. So let's take a look. Response looks very similar to the structure defined when using structure API. We have title, passenger data, a list of fields. As you can see, each of them contains a property value informing about the value passed by the user. So we have John, Smith, and Mr. We also have an action that calls the form to be closed. We will learn more about actions in the upcoming lessons. Custom form service always returns the same response format, no matter if you use Text API or Structure API.